but this is real. And I think we are blessed to have not an actress or actor, but a real person say, this is what I went through, and this is what I'm going through. And so probably the first question that I've seen this video over and over again, you have a copy of the video, because you can't watch this video enough. Because every time I watch this video, something else strikes me, some other thought comes to mind, some other insight. So we want you to have the video so that you can look at it. Share it with your friends, your colleagues. We have our counselors who use this video with problem gambling clients so that they can see this. I think it's important to understand that what we see in the video is really pretty much unedited. So we didn't pick the parts that fit exactly good counseling or good feedback from the client, or this would be nice to say. We wanted you to get a feel for what it would be like sitting across from Joy. What would you do if Joy came into your facility, your office, and she shared this story with you? Or, more importantly, what would you do with Joy when the day she gets out of prison and comes to you for help? Because the question in my mind that still seems to hang in her life is why? And as Chris Anderson said, one of our colleagues, and we are blessed to have all of those people in that video, are experienced professional gambling colleagues. As Chris Anderson said, until you can address that why, you're probably doomed to repeating your addiction. Alcohol, drugs, tobacco, gambling, and all the other addictions that you, in one form or another, might deal with in your lives. As counselors, as professionals, as family members, as church members, as community service members, as advocates. What we hear in the video is that 1 in 4 or 5 people who are addicted to gambling attempt suicide. And so in our trainings we say that in general terms, gamblers have twice the rate of suicide than alcoholics and drug addicts. The other little point of information there, again, some of these statistics may be low. We hear for every problem gambler, there are at least 8 or 9 people who are negatively impacted by gambling, whose lives are affected by a problem gambler. In Maryland, we say that there are at least 150,000 adult problem gamblers. That's what our Maryland baseline survey in 2011 told us. There are at least, in 2011, and we are now in 2015, in 2011 there were 150,000 adult problem gamblers in Maryland. Multiply that by 9. That's the potential for someone coming in asking for help for themselves, for their family members, a spouse, a relative, a friend. So we know that gambling does not discriminate based on age, race, sex, religion, what job you have, or where you live in the state of Maryland. There's no county or community that does not have problem gamblers. So I think it's important to take the last part of this training, this 3 or 4 day training, and now say, okay, now what are you going to do about it? What can you do in your communities, in your agency, in your own professional practice, in your personal lives, in your relationships with family and friends? I think there's really good information in 3 or 4, day 3 and 4. But ultimately, when you walk out of here in probably 35, 40 minutes, now guess what? Our job is finished. Your job begins. So the reason why I think it's good to end with understanding joy is because you need to ask some questions. So let's really briefly kind of hear what we think, because I have to tell you, the range of reactions to understanding joy for me has been eye-opening. And I will share some of that at the end. So, first question is, how is gambling addiction similar to alcohol and drug addiction? I'm supposed to move closely to you because he wants to hear it.
Well, from watching the DVD, it's like a morphine drip, and similar to.
Uh-huh.
So the brain is, I guess, yeah. The brain is similar.
Yeah.
And stimulated.
Okay. Other thoughts?
He said it's the judge said they're both a disease, not a volitional act.
Okay. Mm-hmm. How many of us have been around and heard that wonderful federally sponsored program, Just Say No? Really very effective, right? I mean, we have cut down on drug use and alcohol use. Just say no. Any thoughts, Mark? Anything else?
I think they said about the brain scans that the brain gets hijacked just like the other addictions.
Right. Right. I think one of...
More and more to get that
Right. It's the more and more high. Am I doing okay? Too close? Too far close? Okay. The more and more high. Takes me a 6-pack to get that buzz. Now it takes me 2 6-packs to get that buzz. It takes me one big good shot to get really mellow. Now I need 2 shots to get really mellow. So you need to do more and more to get the same brain reaction, the same stimulation, the same whether it be gambling, drugs, or alcohol. So we need to keep that in mind, that it's a progressive addiction. You just can't stop. It's progression. Okay, the second question. What is the impact of gambling on the family and its rate of suicide attempts? What do you think? Impact on the family.
Disappointment, betrayal, loss of trust, anger, frustration.
Shame, anger, frustration, disappointment, trust. I think one of the things that, from a family perspective, and Deb may be able to say yes or no to this, and maybe I'm talking more from my other perspective on this, is that it's what is destroyed is trust. Now, I know we talked a little bit about, the gambler using the college fund, and the child may or may not have forgiven the parent for that. But does the child trust that parent? Does the spouse trust that parent? Does the spouse, from your drug and alcohol work, he comes home 15 minutes late. What's the first question? Hi, honey, how are you? Where were you? What were you doing? Why were you late? So we know that from our other addiction work, that building trust back up, whether it be with the spouse, the relatives, friends, colleagues, your work, is a really difficult journey, because it's a journey. And we know from many other things that some spouses just say, nope, that's it. This is it. Pack your stuff, get out of here, it's over. And so it's important to keep in mind that sometimes what motivates the gambler to come in is that we've reached that point. You either get help or that's it. So there are a lot of family dynamics going on with that, and I think we already mentioned the suicide rate and the impact on families. I think it's really important for us to keep that in mind here in Maryland. If in actual fact we have just, and I don't think so, if we have just 150,000 adult problem gamblers in Maryland and 8 to 9 people are affected by each one of those individuals, we're talking about over 1 million Maryland residents who are impacted by problem gambling. They eventually will make their way to their pastors, to their counselors, to their friends, to their neighbors, to their confidants. Okay, what are some signs and symptoms of gambling addiction? You had number 4. Did you have number 3? Okay, let's go to, oh, I'm sorry, doctor? You had number 4. Anybody have signs and symptoms? Who over here had signs and symptoms? Somebody over here has had this 3. Let's go over with signs and symptoms. Who had signs and symptoms? This table, okay.
I think the feeling of desperation and fear, as well as shame. and stuff.
Okay, signs, fear, desperation, okay. Anything else? I'm sorry, what's that?
Gambling despite negative consequences.
Gambling despite negative consequences, I think, is a very big one in terms of that. Yes. Any, what's that? I'm sorry. Chasing. Ramping up more and more. Mm-hmm.
The tendency to feel like, I mean, they deny or minimize the consequences to themselves and to others. They always have an explanation, or sometimes it's somebody else's fault for, you know.
Okay. Okay. I always ask this question. What's the first thing you think about in the morning when you get up? What's the last thing you think about when you go to bed at night? So each of us has the first thing that we thought, and I agree, first thing I think about is I'm going out and put the coffee pot on. Okay? What's the last thing you think about? Now imagine you're in the world of the gambler. It's the first thing that you think about. When am I going to gamble? Where am I going to go to gamble? How am I going to gamble today? I mean, one of the things I have done training for employees in casinos in Pennsylvania for a number of years. Mary does it here in Maryland. But I am always amazed when I drive by casinos in any state how many work trucks there are on the casino parking lot. How many plumbing trucks, electrical trucks, contractor trucks, Xerox copier trucks. I always think when I'm driving through the parking lot of a casino, wow, a lot of stuff must break down in this casino because there's a lot of workers here. Preoccupation. And here's the thing that preoccupation does and why we take this so seriously. Do you really want the plumber who's installing your gas electric heater to be preoccupied about when he or she is going to gamble next? Do you want the heart surgeon who's doing your bypass? Do you want him to be thinking about, I just need to get through this so I can go and gamble? So we know that gambling doesn't discriminate, that preoccupation. You know, I talk to my youth all the time about that, and here's how they understand it. I ask my middle schoolers, high schoolers, because they almost all have this. How many people have a cell phone? Kids raise their hands. And I ask this question: when do you turn it off? Never. They never turn their cell phones off. They're on 24/7, even when they're sleeping. The gambler's brain never gets turned off. It's always on 24/7. Okay, so yes, I'm sorry, Deb. Right. Right. Including gambling. I need to keep that in mind. Okay, let's go to that question number 4, the group here, number 4. What role does the brain play in regards to gambling addiction? Doc?
That she wanted to know why. She talked about amounts of money, $780,000 she's taken, and Your Honor said that she would be punished. I understood that, but I think in terms of always implementing punishment, I think you need to seek out, do an assessment first, and see what kind of services you can get for this person. Because she may need medication maintenance, where you can redirect the brain's cycle, where she think differently. This is very important. My colleagues may want to say something.
Go ahead.
How does the gambling affect the brain? It affects the brain, the reward system pathway. As you've seen that, that's where that euphoric feeling, that rush, the need to, as you stated, to increase the amount gamble just to get the rush that you're actually seeing when he showed the scans of the reward pathway system. So it's similar to the addictive person of the substances that creates this dependency. May it be, especially its equivalent, a lot of similarities with opiate dependency, where the neurological system adapts to the opiate. However, it's in a reward pathway system. That's the answer to your question.
You should write that up so we can read it at a... That was a wonderful answer. Thank you very much. Very comprehensive, very good, and very apropos for the last part of this second day of training. So if anybody wants to know anything about the brain, please ask her. Okay, question number 5. Recovery from gambling addiction, just one second, has many barriers. What are some of the challenges that are identified in the video? So barriers to recovery. Yes.
Not really acknowledging that they have a problem.
Okay.
The guilt that comes along with
Guilt.
it, the denial, the shame, and sometimes just being afraid to reach out.
Okay. Other, yes, ma'am.
The not acknowledging because she's not understanding that the addiction itself. She's not understanding that it isn't her fault, that it's a disorder. She has not owned up to the fact that it's a disorder. And until she owns up to that and realizes there is a disorder there and I need to know more about it and what I can do about it, then that's going to be a big barrier.
Debbie knows one of my phrases is, sometimes we talk about this. When you have this addiction, are you going to treat the gambling problem, or are you going to treat the problem gambler? Okay? Are you going to treat the gambling problem? We have strategies for that, how to deal with finances, all those things. But how are you going to treat the problem gambler? Because you're treating the person. And I think keeping those two very clearly in mind, or the distinction between those two, is really important. Yes, somebody want to say something?
No, I was just thinking of a treatment for her because physically, mentally, she is a drug addict. So she needs some kind of withdrawal, hospitalization, and then treating her.
Do gamblers have physical withdrawal symptoms? Do gamblers have physical withdrawal symptoms? Everybody who thinks yes, raise your hand. Everybody who don't know, not sure, or I don't agree. Deb? The answer is yes. And some of those would be, Debbie? Anxiety, high blood pressure, can't sleep, can't eat, those things too. Because we know some of our gamblers go to casinos and they're wearing their Depends. Why? So they don't have to get up, because they're going to be in the casino for 24, 48 hours straight. And the last thing that a slots player wants to do is to go away from their machine. Because when they do move from their machine, somebody else is going to move in their machine, and guess what? They're going to win on my machine. So I ain't giving up my machine. I ain't going to the bathroom. Right? Okay, so go ahead.
In the video, it stated that she had minimum consequences, because that could be a barrier to recovery, because there weren't enough consequences to make her not do it again.
The first time.
The first time. And when a young lady was talking about not being able to accept it, if I can't accept that I have a problem with this behavior, then recovery is going to be difficult, because I'm not going to think I need any help at all.
Right. Yes, sir.
I had concerns because she's had suicidal thoughts, and she just said right in the video, I'd rather be dead. So are we going to even see her get out of jail? Because they're not going to catch that in there.
They did.
They did good. They also, I know the women in jail, they play cards and gamble all day long.
That's how they
So
pass their
she's
time.
going to have a really tough time. She's not in complete denial, because she says some of the right things, but then she's still not owning it all. It's not it's us. So
I think good observations. Just want to give you a little piece of information. It's the only prison now in Maryland that sponsors GA meetings. Everybody know Michael Rosen on our staff? Michael Rosen runs a GA group at Joey's prison. Why? Because the warden said she's not the only person here in this prison with this problem. And we are blessed to have someone in the justice judicial system to recognize the fact that that person's not in only to serve their time, but perhaps to get some help, at least while they're there. Okay, so question number 4, I think, comes back to this group. Is that correct? So going back to question number 4, what role does the brain play in regards to gambling addiction? Any other comments?
It blocks out the negatives. The person behaves as if they're in a trance, robotic type state.
Okay, robotic in a trance, right? What did she say? I sat there and I just lost all consciousness of there's only my world as I'm sitting there. So, we make applications. This is the application time. Why is it that seniors, older adults, like to go to casinos? Because when they're in the casino, they don't have any arthritis, they don't have any aches, they don't have any pains, they feel good, They're not lonely. They're not home by themselves. They're sitting with other people they can talk to and chat, and guess what? Somebody comes up to them and says, "Is there anything I can get for you?" So when we talk about our senior or older adults, again, special population, special needs, but it used to be that our seniors would do mall walking. Not safe to do that anymore. Where can you go where you have thousands of cameras, you have security all over the place, cheap meals, I can stay all day and nobody's going to tell me to leave? So our society changes a lot. And the people in our society make those adjustments. So when we talk about dealing with senior problem gamblers, there are particular issues associated with our senior problem gamblers that we need to keep in mind too. It's not all bad. There was a casino in Pennsylvania that I work with, and they decided to get people into the casino, because that's their business, get people into the casino. They decided to open up 1 day a week a breakfast bar opened at 6 o'clock in the morning. It was open from 6 o'clock until noon. On the very first day, there were people outside in line for that breakfast bar. And guess who they were? The seniors. And guess what that casino does now? They have it every day. $2.99 for a breakfast buffet, as much as you can eat, as long as you want to eat it. Okay? So I'm just saying, when we look at special populations, know that there's issues with our special populations. Okay, what are some signs? We already talked about that. Let's go to question number 2. What is the impact of gambling on the family and its rate of suicide? Any other insights on it? Betrayal, okay? Betrayal, shame, all of those things. Denial. Anything else? Right, right. I mean, you have to remember that the very worst consequence of problem gambling is the thought of suicide. And so problem gamblers, if they still have an insurance policy, might just consider walking in front of that bus, might just consider cleaning that loaded gun, might just think about driving into that bridge abutment. Right now in Maryland, the breakdown in gender is getting closer and closer to 50-50. Debbie, do you want to say anything more about that? Yeah. Yeah, yeah. And Debbie, do you know if they talked about the action escape gambler issue? Okay. Competition. Yeah. Yeah. Right. Right. And the interesting thing about that is this, that mostly, like Joey said, you know, when she was asked, well, what did you gamble on? Slots. The only thing? Yeah. Because very often what you find is you're either a slots player or you're a table game player. You're not both. Action is different. Involvement is different. So I always say this in my training. Without spending a penny, I want to make this clear, without spending a penny, if you really, really want to get a feel for the gambler, go to one of our casinos and walk around and look at people. If you want a master's degree in psychology, walk up and down the slots rows. Because here's what happens. Our slots players particularly, if you do this enough, and I have done it enough that this is my own experience I talk from, I will have slots players put their hand on the glass of the slot machine to stop it from rolling over. I will have my slots player poke the machine to stop at a certain number. That's our slots players. Our table game players have some really weird things too, like they only wear their lucky underwear to their tables. They only play with their lucky dealers. If they're used to getting up and walking around the chair twice, they will get up and walk around the chair twice. Because that's what they do. That's how they get their luck. I could tell you so many bizarre stories. Yes, go ahead.
I think it would be helpful in it, to do, and I wrote it down, a more detailed piece on Gamblers Anonymous and Gam-Anon, so that people had some real idea of the resources there, because they can deal, they're free, they're everywhere, they're all, well, they're not as frequent as substance use problems, but to deal with the loss of community, with a community that understands shame, you can't do better than that. Nobody's going to be in treatment every day.
Right, exactly. You can go on our website, and we have the list of all of the GA meetings in Maryland, Washington, and Virginia. And you would be shocked to see how few GA meetings there are in Maryland. You will be shocked to see that there is, I don't think, Debbie, it may have changed, I don't think there's one women's group. So just to go back to your point in terms of gender issues, you have to remember, we love our GA support. We love what GA does. But it's not for everyone. It doesn't meet everyone's needs. It's not the kind of help that they want or need. So we support our GA brothers and sisters, and actually talk about that in a little bit. But it's a resource, another resource. Self-exclusion, another resource. Co-occurring disorders, you may have AA, NA, GA, whatever. Just know, as the counselor, you're looking to say what best fits this client's needs.
And her family.
His or her family.
And so Gam-Anon.
Right. Very few Gam-Anon meetings. That's the problem here. But Michael Rosen is working on that. And we are a great resource to have Michael Rosen with us. Okay, very last thing we're going to do. How is gambling addiction similar to alcohol and drug addiction?
I really had the same thought as the other group who answered.
Okay. Something else? Anybody else? Okay, cool. Any other final thoughts in terms of understanding joy? What do you think is the most important message? What message did you get from understanding joy? What's the most important message you received, you got, you took away from?
That gambling is a disease, a sickness, and not a crime. And unfortunately, she didn't get the help the first time around when she got in trouble with the law.
So I think the most important thing that we, over the last 2.5 years, have really been blessed to see is that we moved from DSM-4, impulse control, to DSM-5, addiction. It's moved from the back of the book to the middle of the book. Really important. Somebody else had, oh, go ahead.
I was very happy for her when she, at the very end, when she started to cry, because for the first time she got real and she couldn't escape from her problems, and she might have, from then on, been able to face the true roots and get help, you know.
Good observations. The Understanding Joy video for me is an onion. You just keep peeling back layer after layer after layer. It's just, I'll be right there.
I don't know if this can be, you know, you have you said a more extensive version, extended version. But the thing what I would have liked to see is there was no mention for her of, you know, how this first thing happened anyway. I mean, what was there? Was there trauma? Was there abuse? Was there whatever? I mean, does she not know that, or was it never talked about? You know, in terms of, yeah, we need to have treatment. That I think is important that this leaves me with. But like, what was the reason for her? It just, you know.
That's the why. That was the why question. Why? Yes, ma'am.
For me, I looked at the fact that it is a disease, it's a disorder. Not only that, most of all, the reality of it is real and it doesn't discriminate.
Right. Oh yeah, we have our Catholic nuns, CFO of a Catholic organization, embezzled $1 million for her gambling addiction. We have lawyers in Maryland. We have judges in Maryland. We have police in Maryland. We have school teachers. As I said, and I say it because I know, gambling does not discriminate based on age, race, what job you have, what your religious or ethnic background is, or what your family values are. It does not discriminate. Okay? Any other final thoughts? I hope that you will be able to review the Understanding Joy video as many times as you can and want to. It is as instructional in intent as it is inspirational as an intent. Yes, ma'am. The simple answer to that question is yes. Yes, we have. As in any addiction, it's a journey. It's a lifelong journey. It's a lifelong acceptance of who I am and what I do and why I've done it. So you all know that from your drug and alcohol reality. It's a journey. And that's why, you know, Debbie just mentioned very briefly, you know, I always like this expression, one day at a time. Well, when I hear that expression, Deb, I think about harm reduction. You know, my mom had never told me to stop. She just said, take it one day at a time, Carl. And taking it one day at a time means harm reduction. Do it today. Not sure what's going to happen tomorrow, but today, if I take it one day at a time, I'm working on it today. I'm trying to do better today. Will I ever get to the point where I never do it again? Sure, when you die. When you're in the grave and somebody visits your grave, then you will know with absolute certainty you'll never have this problem again on this earth. So, Christina, we're ready for you.
So, yeah, just lastly, we hope to see you on the BACC calls once a month. contact the Center of Excellence and get registered and start participating. And you can go to the National Council of Problem Gambling website and look up the certification requirements, and feel free to email me at dghmosaic@gmail.com, and I can give you a business card if
We're
you're
not ready to leave
on the
yet,
way out. So,
please sit down.
all right, that's it.
Okay, so if, Christine, you want to come up and do this?
If you were here yesterday and today, your CEU certificate is on the table in the back with your name